sat down one evening within a small cafe. A 40-year-old waitress to me these words did say, well, I see that you're a logger. Well, you're not just a common bum, 'cause nobody but a logger stirs his coffee with his thumb. My lover, he was a logger, sure there's none like him today. Why, if you'd pour whiskey on it, he would eat a bale of hay. Well, he never shaved his whiskers from off of his horny hide. Sure, he'd just drive 'em in with a hammer, and he'd bite them off inside. My lover, he came to see me upon one freezing day. Well, he held me in a fond embrace which broke 3 vertebrae. He kissed me when we parted, so hard that he broke my jaw. I couldn't speak to tell him he forgot his mackinaw. Now I saw my logger leaving, he was sauntering through the snow. He was going bravely homeward at a 48 below. Now the weather, it tried to freeze him, sure it tried its level best. At 100 degrees below zero, why, he buttoned up his vest. It froze clean through to China, it froze to the stars above. At 1,000 degrees below zero, well, it froze my logger love. And so I lost my logger, and to this cafe I'll come, and here I'll wait till someone stirs his coffee with his thumb.
First, obtain suitable material. You will need 3 logs, 2 short pieces about 1 meter or 3.5 feet long, and a longer piece about 2.5 meters or 8 feet long. Arrange these by placing the longer log across the shorter ones. Make sure they are stable and reasonably level. Because we plan to cut a saddle notch, you'll have to cut a scarf on each of the short logs first. Remove the long log and snap a center line on each of the short logs. Place the scarf board template on this center line to lay out the scarf dimensions. Mark the depth of the scarf at the center and trace the width of the scarf on the top of the log. A scarf board is a piece of material about 75 millimeters wide and 450 millimeters long, that is 3 inches by 18 inches. These sizes may vary with log size. The scarf board is also used to place the end marks for the scarf. With the saw, make a guide cut at the center. Use this cut to help determine the slope of the cut. If you plan to finish with a power planer, start your cut about a blade width inside the end mark. Use the back of the bar to cut, and make sure that you do not cut too deeply. When approaching the center of the scarf, lead with the bottom of the bar so that the cut goes through more smoothly. You are going to cut a slope on each side of the log by removing the segments shown in yellow. Again, end the cut about one blade width short of the end mark. Dress the cut smooth with an axe, slick, or plane. In this case we are using a round bottom power plane. The planer sequence is shown. Work from the end to the center. Do 1 and 2 from one side of the log and 3 and 4 from the opposite side. As well as looking better, this smooth surface sheds weather better and is easier to scribe. Be very careful with this machine. Keep your hands away from the blade and don't hit your legs. Keep the power cord in the clear. Now let's look at this again. Mark the depth at the center, then trace the width of the scarf on the top of the log. Make a center guide cut. Line up the saw and begin your cut one blade width from the end mark and with the back of the bar. Slope the saw forward at the bottom as you go through the center. Then end about one blade width short of the end mark. Do not cut too deeply. The scarf is an important part of your work. Now it might be a good time to practice a little. When both saddles have been cut and dressed, replace the longer log ready for scribing. Choose a scribe width about halfway down the face of the scarf and set your scribers to this height. At this point, you may wish to check your scriber at the level board. A level board is a piece of 1x4 or 2x4 with a reference line that is plumb on both vertical planes. With this, both level bubbles may be checked at the same time. Fix the board to a firm location. Then wedge it into a true vertical position. Draw a plumb line on this surface and date it. You may now accurately set both of the levels on the scriber in one operation. First, you are going to make a preliminary scribe and cut a preliminary notch in order to get the log into a better position for a final scribe. This scribe is made more quickly than a final scribe, but reasonable care should be used, especially in the beginning. Position the scriber on the underside of the log. Keep your attention on the bubbles. Hold the instrument lightly in both hands and at 45 degrees to the work. Drag the scriber to the midpoint of the scribe while watching the bubbles and feeling for the contact of both points. Now roll the log until the scribed side is up and dog it in place. Make the first cut straight down at the center of the notch. Use the full bar right across the log. Start the side cuts right at the scribe line and follow it to the bottom, again with the saw straight across the notch. In all cases, cut to the line, but not beyond the line. Split the pieces out with your axe, and, except for a little brushing, the notch is fully formed. Cut scriber relief at the top of the notch. This is often necessary. Scriber relief will provide access for the lower leg of the scriber when the final notch goes beyond the center of the log. If the notch segment is too wide to be easily split off, you might make two cuts in the center, or use a plug cut. With your log again in position to scribe, locate a width near the bottom of the scarf and register this dimension on the side of the log in case you need to recheck your setting. Now set the scriber up carefully at the level board. Your work will be very dependent on this adjustment. From a comfortable position, scribe to the midpoint from the top, then from the bottom. If the material is very dry, use a spray bottle or sponge to dampen the wood. As a reference, you might mark the position of your scribe onto the lower log. Hold the scriber lightly in both hands and watch the bubbles. Feel for the point contact, then, after the segment has been drawn, spot check to see that the line is complete and accurate. Maintain the instrument at 45 degrees to the work, so that you will be writing on the points. Also, check to be sure that the pencil did not follow a crack or other deformity in the log. Roll the notch up again for the final cut and dog it securely in place. Sketch in a 5 or 6 millimeter relief at the top of the notch. Score around the edge of the notch with a good chisel to prevent fraying the edge of the cut. Hold the chisel firmly in the center and walk it around the cut. Keep the flat side of the chisel out and leave the line on the work. Cut about 5 millimeters deep. A scoring knife may also be used. It will work best, however, on softer woods. Cut to depth at the center of the notch. Be careful to keep the bar straight and to not overcut the line. Cut each quarter just inside the scribe line. Watch the cut line and aim the saw as though you were intending to cut right across the notch. Your cut should extend only slightly more than halfway across, so that you can see where you are cutting. When all 4 quarters have been cut, break out the pieces of wood and brush the work carefully to the line with the blade of the saw at right angles to the work. Trim to the scribe line with a very sharp chisel or axe, and the notch is complete. Check across the notch with a straight edge to be sure that there are no high spots. The notch should be slightly concave, 12 millimeters or half an inch in the center. Roll the log down and check your work. We hope you will be proud of your first attempt, but every log is a new challenge and every log is better than the last. This instruction will, in addition to what you learned in practice notch, demonstrate how to place a log on the wall, how to scribe and cut the lengthwise groove, and how to place a relief cut in the top of the log. First, it may be necessary to peel the log you will be using. There are many ways to do this, and will depend on the kind of log, the time of year, the location, and what equipment or resources are available to you. The most common methods are draw knives of different sizes and weights, peeling spuds, or high-pressure water. High-pressure water leaves a smooth, natural-looking log, and a draw knife will leave a different kind of finish. Place the log on the wall with whatever means you intend to use, and secure it with rolling dogs already in place. Check the ends of the log for the correct location. Then roll the log into the best position for scribing. This will be with the bow out and the straightest sides on the top and bottom, so that the space between this log and the one below will be as uniform as possible. Shift the log into a rough alignment on the wall in preparation for the preliminary scribe. Measure the gap between this log and the one below at a location just inside the intersecting wall. Go to the other end and register this measurement in a convenient place that will later be removed as the scarf is cut. Measure the gap at this end and mark it also on the log, using the same mark for the origin. Your purpose is to make the space between the logs as uniform as possible. This will mean lowering the high end or raising the low end of the log. At the same time, you may wish to bring the entire log down to a predetermined height. In order to do this, you will have to set the scribers to the measured gap less the predetermined scribe height at each end of the log. This could be done at each end of the log separately, or the two reference marks may be combined so that end A and end B have a common scribe deduction of, say, 60 millimeters or 2.5 inches, as represented by the red bar. End A and end B, each with the final scribe deduction, may be sketched separately or combined, as in this illustration. Now scribe each log end separately according to its height. To do this, set the distance for end B and complete that scribe. Then reset the scriber for end A before returning to the end of the log where you started. You should not have to check your scriber at the level board for these preliminary scribes. However, if the logs are dry, you may want to use some water in order to obtain a well-defined line. Remove the inside dog and roll the log in on the wall until the scribe is upward. The dogs can be used to control and to position the log. Cut these preliminary or location notches while up on the wall. Use the same sequence as was shown in the practice notch. That is to say, cut down at the center to the scribe line with the saw straight across the log. Then a second and third cut right on the scribe line and to the same depth. This notch is being cut slightly wide, and the position of the log will be dependent on an accurate fit at the top after the scriber relief has been cut in. When you have cut both ends, roll the notches down. Use care so that the heavy log will not bounce too much. Position the work roughly in line with the wall. The space between this new log and the one below should now be nearly equal at each end. Place a chalk line down the perceived center of the log, with the emphasis on weight rather than position. A curved log may require that the line be toward the outside at the ends and the inside at the center. Draw a plumb line at each end, originating with the chalk line. This line should only be a short mark at the top and bottom. Then bump this line into good alignment with the center line of the wall below. Now dog it firmly in place so that it will not move while you do the final scribe. The log should now exhibit a uniform gap. If not, you may want to raise one end or recut the other end. Check the entire length of the wall inside the notches until you are sure of the widest spot. Check both sides. Then register this width on the side of the log. This will be the scribe setting for the notches. Add approximately 6 millimeters or 1/4 inch to this setting to scribe the groove. This so-called overscribe will provide better bearing at the notches, and it might be increased under certain conditions. Set your scriber up carefully at the level board, then check at each scarf corner. If the scribe comes below the scarf, you will have a recurve situation. Mark the scribe location and adjust the scarf if required. When all 8 corners have been checked, scribe the notches as you did with your practice notch. That is, hold the scriber lightly in both hands, watch only the bubbles, and work at 45 degrees to the notch. Set the scriber again to the 6 millimeter mark and do the length of the log between the notches. Do both sides and look to be sure that the line is complete and has no missed places. Then open the scriber another 6 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch to do the end portion or overhang. Scribe the end of the log as well. It may be necessary to trim the end into line first. Add 5 millimeters or 1/4 inch relief in the center of the end. Take care when you cut this groove to keep it uniform for its entire length. Finally, add another 6 millimeters relief at the top of the notch to avoid any possibility of hang-up there. At this time, you may also want to lay out the scarf dimensions. This will be done with a suitable scarf board as you did with the practice log. This layout may also be done on the ground after the notches and groove have been cut. The log may now be removed from the wall and placed on a cutting rack or on blocks. Portable blocks may be fashioned from short lengths of log. If they are a uniform size, about 200 millimeters or 8 inches high, and 750 millimeters or 30 inches long, they can be stacked. Make sure that the notch is long and shallow. Score around the notch with a sharp chisel that is about 30 to 40 millimeters wide. Cut a clean line about 6 millimeters deep and in line with the shape of the notch. Because this notch is wide, it is being cut as a plug cut to remove the major portion of the wood in one piece. If you are a beginning builder, cut the notch by first removing the block of wood at the center. Be careful not to overcut your lines. From here on, cut only a little more than halfway across the notch, so that you can more easily see your work. Cut about 5 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch away from the scribe line. When the 4 quarters have been cut, the slabs of wood should break out quite easily. Cut along the scribe line until the coving is correct. Then brush the edge to the scored line. Keep brushing to a minimum. Use the saw at right angles to the work and work very gently. When both notches have been formed, you might want to check the clearance with a straight edge, in order to assure yourself that the log will rest only at the edge. The next step will be to cut the wall groove. This first short portion demonstrates the W cut. The first cut will be just inside the scribe line. Keep the saw upright so that the curves in the scribe line can be more easily followed, and cut about 40 millimeters or 1½ inches deep. The direction of the cut should be on or a little flatter than the radius line of the log. The second cut will be the same on the other side of the scribe. The third cut will reach across from one side to the other and meet with the bottom of the first cut. Be careful not to cut too deeply and damage the base of the groove. You should be able to see or feel at what depth the saw goes through. The fourth cut will remove the other side, and cuts 5 and 6 can be used to reduce the height of the center portion if this is required. Many different profiles have been used for this location, and the three most common ones are shown. First, a deep V cut, which is considered to be the least desirable, a W cut, which is the most frequently used, and a cove shape, which is considered to be better or the best. There are a number of different sequences for this job, and the operator should feel free to experiment. Use a discarded round of wood to check the clearance of the work. Whatever shape of groove you select, the log end portion, or overhang, must be cut to a cove shape for its entire length. First, trace in the radius of the cove at the log end as a guide. Then cut a shallow V groove that does not go below this radius and does not overlap at the center. Note that the saw is held with the blade down so that the cut can be flatter. Because the log ends might be trimmed to a different design shape, it's necessary to maintain the cove that was drawn on the end for the whole distance. Because if the cove relief varies a large amount, it will produce an undesirable appearance at the log end. Work the cove from the log end for the length of the bar, With practice, this cut can be made accurately and quickly, and the quality of your work should be carefully maintained here. If the groove is deep near the notch, it will be necessary to cut a straighter side on the groove near the notch to avoid interference at the scarf. Trim away any wood that remains inside the scribe line to leave a sharp, clean edge. This operation is best done with a very sharp axe or a very heavy chisel. I heartily discourage the use of small chisels for this job because they are too time-consuming. A very sharp gouge knife can also be used for this work, and such a tool will be useful to dress up any remaining high spots inside the groove. Now gently, so that the edge of the groove will not be damaged, roll the log over and cut the scarf. Lay out the dimensions of the scarf with the scarf board in the same way that it was done in the practice notch. Only this time, the bottom edge of the scarf will be a little below the top of the notch. Make a center cut to provide a guide for the slope. Then if you are to use a power plane, start your cut with the back of the saw about 1 blade width inside this mark. Slope the bottom of the saw forward as you go through the center cut. Reach just below the top of the notch and finish the cut about a blade width short of the end mark. If this cut is well aligned and smooth, the amount of work required to complete it will be minimal. If the cut is uneven, it may be improved by brushing with a saw at a 45-degree angle to the log. Plane the saw cut smooth to the marks so that it is more able to shed water. This operation may also be done with hand tools or an angle grinder. The latter will leave a less smooth finish. There are only 2 more steps before replacing this log on the wall. 1. Dress up the top of the log to facilitate the placing and scribing of the next piece. This can be done with a chainsaw or an axe or a power plane. And finally, in green logs, there is an advantage to making a relief cut down the length of the log and wedging this in order to restrict checking to this hidden location. Your well-cut and finished log may now be replaced on the wall. You have completed a very satisfactory and permanent part of your house. May it give you great pleasure for a long time to come.
How he kissed me when we parted, so hard that he broke my jaw. I couldn't speak.